600 days. 600 days Elena Ricci had existed as a ghost in Mattia Bruno's estate. Her hands scrubbed floors that gleamed like mirrors under crystal chandeliers she would never own. Folded linens softer than anything her skin had ever touched. Polished silverware that cost more than 3 months of her rent. The estate stretched across private grounds in the northern hills, all white marble and wrought iron and windows overlooking a city where she could barely afford a basement corner. Mattia Bruno was a shadow she had learned to predict. Hearing his footsteps in the corridor, measured and deliberate, she knew to vanish into another wing. Glimpsing him through doorways, dark slicked back hair, chest marked with ornamental ink beneath expensive suits, eyes like black stone that never once acknowledged her existence. Her job was to disappear, and she was extraordinarily good at disappearing. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's go back to hours before, where it all started. $150,000 in debt does not vanish on its own. Christiana, her 10-year-old sister, had been diagnosed with degenerative spinal stenosis 2 years ago. The condition gnawed at her spine with surgical precision, stealing her ability to walk a centimeter at a time. $97,000 in specialist consultations, emergency procedures, and medications that kept the progression at bay but offered no cure. Bills arrived weekly after each appointment, reminders that even childhood has a price tag. Then 6 months ago, the state threatened to place Christiana in a medical foster home. Elena was 23, unmarried, working minimum wage, deemed unable to provide adequate care. Another $53,000 to retain a lawyer who kept the case in limbo while promising nothing. Elena signed payment plans that would follow her into her 50s. Accepted interest rates that felt like theft in legal clothing. Learned to survive on stale bread and staler hope. She worked 2 jobs. 4 o'clock in the morning she woke. 5 o'clock she arrived at the Bruno estate. 6 o'clock in the evening she returned to their one-room basement apartment to care for Christiana. 3 hours of physical therapy exercises learned from borrowed library books, because they could not afford a specialist. 4 hours of sleep each night, if fortune smiled. Her body ran on espresso and exhaustion. Exhaustion for not earning enough. Exhaustion for watching Christiana's legs grow weaker. Exhaustion for still standing while her sister could barely walk. The estate demanded perfection. Elena had learned this in her first week when Mrs. Lombardi, the head housekeeper, inspected every corner with white gloves and a frown that could wither flowers. A single streak on a mirror. A wrinkle in a pillowcase. A fingerprint on the brass railings. Any imperfection meant a written warning, and 3 warnings meant termination. Elena could not afford termination. She could not afford anything except the crushing weight of survival. Most mornings she arrived while the household still slept. The estate at dawn was a cathedral of silence, vast and cold and beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. She moved through the rooms like water, touching everything and disturbing nothing. The library with its floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with leather-bound books no one read. The dining hall where a table built for 20 sat empty, except for formal dinners twice a month. The guest suites on the 3rd floor that remained perpetually prepared for visitors who never came. Every surface gleamed, every corner spotless, every trace of her presence erased before the family woke. She had her routines. Mondays were the east wing, Tuesdays the west, Wednesdays the main hall and staircase. Thursdays she focused on the kitchen and service areas. Fridays belonged to Mattia Bruno's private quarters, and those were the days she moved fastest, heart hammering, desperate to finish before he emerged from whatever business kept him occupied until noon. His bedroom was a study in controlled minimalism. Black silk sheets she changed without looking at them too closely. A desk covered in papers she never read. Suits hanging in a walk-in closet larger than her entire apartment. Everything precise. Everything expensive. Everything untouchable. She never lingered. Never let her eyes wander. Never allowed herself to wonder what kind of man slept in a bed that cost more than her sister's surgery. The other staff kept their distance from her. Rosa, who managed the kitchen, nodded politely but never invited conversation. Marco, the groundskeeper, grunted acknowledgement when they crossed paths. Mrs. Lombardi issued instructions in clipped tones that left no room for familiarity. Elena understood. She was temporary, replaceable, a body performing tasks until the debt swallowed her whole, or she collapsed from exhaustion, whichever came first. Invisibility was a skill she had perfected. When Mattia Bruno walked through a room, she became part of the furniture. When his associates arrived for meetings in the study, she vanished into the shadows. When raised voices echoed from behind closed doors, she moved to another floor entirely. She heard things. Of course she heard things. Snippets of conversation, names spoken in anger, the metallic click of something heavy being said on a desk. She learned to unhear them immediately, to let the words slide off her consciousness like water off marble. Ignorance was safety. Curiosity was a luxury she could not afford. Some days Christiana called during her lunch break. Her sister's voice, bright and brave despite the pain Elena knew she was hiding, asking about her day, telling small stories about the neighbor's cat or a book she was reading. Elena lied effortlessly, told her work was easy, told her everything was fine, told her the surgery was coming soon, just a little longer, just a few more months. She did not mention the new bills, did not mention the collection agency threatening to garnish her wages, did not mention the fear that lived in her chest like a stone, heavy and cold and constant. That Tuesday evening, the grandfather clock in the main hall chimed 7 o'clock as Elena finished mopping the west wing. October in the northern district meant darkness arrived early and cold bit through worn jackets. Through the tall windows, she watched fog begin to roll across the grounds. Mrs. Lombardi, the head housekeeper, offered to call her a car. Elena declined. She needed to pick up Christiana from the free clinic 4 blocks away. They had missed 2 appointments already. She pulled her worn coat tight and started walking, Christiana's small hand tucked into hers. 4 blocks, just 4 blocks from the Bruno estate to the clinic entrance. She had walked it dozens of times. This neighborhood was supposed to be untouchable. This was Bruno territory. But tonight, the street felt different, emptier than usual. Most storefronts had shuttered early, only security lights casting everything in shades of amber and ash. Her shoes scraped against wet pavement. Christiana limped beside her, trying not to complain, trying to be brave. The alley appeared on their right, narrow and black between 2 warehouses. Elena had passed it many times without concern. But tonight, 3 figures stepped from the shadows, blocking the sidewalk ahead. Elena stopped, heart lurching against her ribs, instinctively pulling Christiana behind her. "Evening," one of them said. Thick accent, shaved head, a scorpion tattoo visible on his neck beneath his collar. His companions were larger, silent, predatory. Elena tried to step around them, but the first man shifted, cutting off her path. "Where are you headed with the little one?" Her voice came out calmer than she felt. "Let us pass." The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Hand over the bag. Phone too. Nice and quick." Elena surrendered everything. She was too exhausted and too familiar with loss to argue. But then his eyes dropped to her uniform, her cleaning shirt visible where her coat hung open, a simple gray polo with the Bruno family crest embroidered discreetly on the chest. He stepped closer. Fog curled around his boots. "You work for Bruno." Terror spiked ice cold through her spine. "I'm just a cleaner. I don't know anything." The man looked at his companions, lips peeling back in a grin. "Moretti will love this. We got a message for the Italian." The first blow came without warning, catching her across the jaw, pain detonating white-hot behind her eyes. Christiana screamed. Elena staggered backward, tasting copper. The world tilted sideways, sounds muffled beneath the ringing in her ears. She tried to reach for Christiana, but another hand grabbed her collar, yanking her forward. The second man, the silent one, held her in place while the tattooed leader circled like a predator, assessing wounded prey. "Please," Elena gasped, blood trickling from her split lip. "She's just a child. She has nothing to do with this." The man ignored her. His boot connected with her ribs, stealing the air from her lungs. She collapsed to her knees, gravel biting through her uniform pants. Through blurred vision, she saw Christiana pressed against the warehouse wall, her small frame shaking, eyes wide with terror Elena had spent years trying to shield her from. "Stop!" Elena choked out. "Take whatever you want. Just let her go." "What we want," the man said, crouching to her level, is for Bruno to understand he doesn't own this city anymore. He grabbed her face, fingers digging into her bruised jaw, forcing her to look at him. You're going to deliver that message. Every time he sees your face, he'll remember the Moretus can reach anyone, even the ghosts. He released her with a shove. Elena's palms scraped against concrete as she caught herself. She heard Christiana whimper, and something inside her crystallized into rage sharper than fear. She tried to stand, to put herself between her sister and these men, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The tattooed man moved toward Christiana. No. Elena lunged forward, fingernails clawing at his jacket. He swatted her away like an insect. She hit the ground hard, stars exploding across her vision. Through the haze she heard Christiana cry out, a sound of pain that carved through Elena's chest worse than any physical blow. Her leg, Elena sobbed, crawling forward. Please, she can't walk. Don't hurt her. The man looked down at Christiana, at the medical brace visible beneath her pants, at the way she crumpled against the wall, unable to run. Something flickered across his face. Not quite remorse, but perhaps recognition that even monsters have lines. He stepped back. Get her out of here, he said to his companions. Then to Elena, you tell Bruno. The Moretus remember every slight, every territory he stole, every man of ours who disappeared. He kicked her bag toward her. Contents spilled across the wet pavement. We'll be seeing you again, little ghost. They vanished into the fog as suddenly as they'd appeared, swallowed by shadows and the maze of alleys that honeycombed this district. Elena dragged herself to Christiana, hands shaking as she checked her sister for injuries. Blood soaked through Christiana's pants where she'd fallen on her weak leg. The brace had twisted, metal digging into skin already scarred from countless procedures. I'm okay, Christiana whispered, but tears streaked her pale cheeks. Elena, you're bleeding. I'm fine. Elena tried to stand and failed. Tried again. Her body was a symphony of pain, each movement conducting a fresh wave of agony. She gathered their scattered belongings with clumsy fingers, found her phone miraculously intact, and pulled Christiana close. Can you walk? Christiana shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. Elena looked at the distance back to the estate. 4 blocks. It might as well have been 4 miles. She couldn't carry her sister, could barely carry herself. The clinic was closer, but they'd closed an hour ago. Their apartment was 15 blocks in the opposite direction. She did the only thing she could. She called the number Mrs. Lombardi had given her for emergencies. 20 minutes later, headlights cut through the fog. Not Mrs. Lombardi's sedan. A black SUV with tinted windows and the kind of quiet engine that spoke of obscene expense. 2 men emerged, both wearing dark suits, both moving with the fluid precision of people intimately familiar with violence. Elena recognized them vaguely as part of Mattia Bruno's inner circle, men who came and went from the estate at odd hours. Christ, one of them muttered, taking in the scene. He spoke rapidly into a phone in Italian too quick for Elena to follow. The other man, younger with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, crouched beside them. Who did this? His voice was surprisingly gentle. I don't know their names, Elena said. They said Moretti. They said it was a message. The scarred man's expression hardened into something murderous. He scooped Christiana up with practiced ease despite her frightened gasp. We're taking you back to the estate. Boss needs to see this. No, Elena protested weakly. Just take us to the hospital. I can't afford to involve him. I'll lose my job. You think you have a choice. The first man was already opening the SUV door. You got marked on Bruno territory. That makes it his business whether you like it or not. The drive back lasted an eternity, compressed into minutes. Elena held Christiana in the back seat, whispering reassurances neither of them believed, watching the fog-shrouded streets give way to the estate's iron gates. Instead of the service entrance she usually used, they drove directly to the main house. Light blazed from every window. More SUVs lined the circular driveway. They were expected. The scarred man carried Christiana inside while his companion helped Elena walk. Her legs had stiffened during the drive, each step a fresh negotiation with pain. They brought them not to the service wing or even the guest quarters, but to a room Elena had only ever cleaned and never dared linger in. Mattia Bruno's private study. He stood with his back to the door, staring out the window at grounds swallowed by darkness. Even motionless, he radiated coiled tension, a storm contained in expensive fabric and controlled breathing. At the sound of their entrance, he turned. Elena had seen him hundreds of times, always at a distance, always in passing, never directed at her, never truly looking. But now his eyes locked on her face, and she felt the full weight of his attention like a physical force. Those black stone eyes traced every injury. The split lip, the swelling cheekbone, the blood dried on her chin, the way she held her ribs. His gaze moved to Christiana, to the child's tear-stained face and the blood seeping through her pants. Something changed in his expression, not softening, hardening into something colder and more dangerous than mere anger. He crossed the room in 3 strides, and Elena instinctively flinched. He stopped short, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, and absolutely lethal. Who the fuck dares hit you? For words. Simple, direct, but carrying the weight of something Elena didn't understand. This wasn't a question about a random assault. This was about territory, about ownership, about a line crossed that she hadn't known existed. I don't know their names, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They said Moretti. Matty, his jaw clenched. You work for me. I'm just a cleaner. You work for me. He repeated, each word carved from ice. That means you're under my protection. Anyone who touches what's mine answers to me. He turned to the scar man. Get Dr. Savino here. Now. And find every Moretti soldier in this city. I want to know where they sleep. Elena swayed. Exhaustion and pain finally overwhelming adrenaline. Mattia caught her elbow, steadying her with a grip that was firm but surprisingly careful. For the first time in 600 days, Mattia Bruno truly saw the ghost who'd lived in his house, and Elena realized her invisibility had just shattered beyond repair. Dr. Savino arrived within the hour, a silver-haired man carrying a medical bag that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. He worked in silence, cleaning wounds, checking for fractures, his weathered hands gentle despite the clinical efficiency. 2 cracked ribs, severe bruising across her torso and face, minor lacerations, nothing requiring hospitalization, he assured Mattia, though his tone suggested he thought otherwise. Christiana received more attention. The doctor examined her twisted brace with a frown that deepened as he inspected the damage to her leg. Fresh hematomas bloomed across skin already mapped with surgical scars. He murmured something to Mattia in Italian, too quiet for Elena to catch, but she saw Mattia's expression darken further. She needs rest, Dr. Savino said finally, switching to English. And proper equipment. This brace is inadequate for her condition. Then get her proper equipment, Mattia replied. Not a request. Elena tried to stand from the leather chair where she'd been deposited. We should go home. Thank you for the doctor. I'll find a way to repay you. Mattia looked at her, as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. You're not going anywhere. I can't stay here. This isn't appropriate. I'm staff. You were staff. He gestured to one of his men hovering near the door. Luca, have the east wing prepared. The blue suite and the adjacent room. Elena's stomach dropped. The blue suite. She'd cleaned it dozens of times, marveling at its opulence, while carefully not leaving fingerprints on the silk wallpaper. A bedroom larger than her entire apartment, with an ensuite bathroom featuring marble imported from Carrara and fixtures plated in actual gold. The adjacent room was nearly as grand, connected by a sitting area with furniture that belonged to museums. No, she said firmly. Absolutely not. We're going home. Your home is 15 blocks away in a basement with mold in the corners and a lock that wouldn't stop a determined child. Mattia's voice remained level, but something in his eyes dared her to argue. You think I don't know where my employees live? You think I haven't seen the reports? Heat flooded her cheeks. You had me investigated. I investigate everyone. He moved to his desk, pouring amber liquid from a crystal decanter into a glass. He didn't drink it, just held it, watching the light refract through expensive scotch. You've worked here 600 days. You've never been late, never called in sick, never asked for advances or loans despite debts that would crush most people. That kind of desperate reliability makes you either extremely trustworthy or extremely dangerous. I need to know which. And what did you decide? That you're a woman trying to save her sister. He set the glass down untouched. The Morettis made you my business tonight. They used you to send a message, which means they'll use you again if given the opportunity. You stay here where I can ensure your safety. For how long? Until I've resolved the Moretti problem. Elena laughed, a bitter sound that made her ribs scream. And when will that be? A week? A month? I can't just abandon my life. What life? Mattia's words cut clean. Working yourself to death while your sister's condition deteriorates because you can't afford proper care? That's not living. That's drowning in slow motion. The truth of it hit harder than any physical blow. Elena looked away, throat tight. Christiana had fallen asleep in the chair beside her, exhausted from pain and fear, her small hand still clutching Elena's sleeve. She needs stability, Elena said quietly, not to be dragged into whatever war you're fighting. She needs surgery. Mattia pulled a folder from his desk drawer, slid it across to Elena. Dr. Savino brought her file. Degenerative spinal stenosis, progressive loss of motor function, recommended surgical intervention estimated at $150,000. Multiple specialists consulted, all agreeing she has maybe 6 months before the damage becomes irreversible. Elena stared at the folder without opening it. She'd memorized those words months ago. I'm working on it. No, you're working yourself to death while time runs out. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Here's what's going to happen. You and Christiana move into the East Wing tonight. Tomorrow, Dr. Savino brings in the specialists he trusts. Real ones, not the clinic doctors who see 50 patients before lunch. They'll evaluate her properly and schedule whatever procedure she needs. I can't afford that. Did I ask you to pay? Elena's head snapped up. I'm not accepting charity. It's not charity. It's restitution. Mattia's expression remained impassive. The Morettis hurt you on my territory, wearing my family's crest, which makes it my responsibility. Consider it compensation for damages incurred during employment. That's not how employment law works. I'm not interested in employment law. I'm interested in making sure a 10-year-old girl doesn't lose the ability to walk because her sister was attacked by my enemies. He pushed off the desk. You can argue semantics, or you can let me help. Choose quickly. I have people to kill tonight. The casual way he said it should have terrified her. Maybe it did. But exhaustion and pain and the weight of 2 years fighting alone had worn her resistance thin. She looked at Christiana's sleeping face, at the blood still visible on her pants despite the doctor's cleaning, at the future narrowing to a point of no return. Temporary, Elena said finally, just until things settle. Agreed. Mattia moved toward the door. Luca will show you to your rooms. Mrs. Lombardi is preparing them now. Anything you need, ask her. What about my apartment? My things. I'll have someone collect them tomorrow. He paused at the threshold. One more thing. You don't clean anymore. You're not staff. You're under my protection, which means you're a guest. Act like it. Before Elena could respond, he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that somehow sounded like a vault ceiling shut. Luca approached carefully, as if worried she might bolt. The rooms are ready. I can carry your sister if you'd like. Elena nodded, too drained to argue. She followed him through corridors she'd walked 1,000 times, but never as anything other than invisible. Now staff paused in doorways, staring. Whispers followed in their wake. Mrs. Lombardi stood at the top of the grand staircase, her expression unreadable as she watched Luca carry Christiana toward the East Wing. The blue suite exceeded even Elena's memories of cleaning it. Someone had turned down the silk sheets, laid out nightgowns in Elena's size, stocked the bathroom with toiletries that probably cost more per bottle than her weekly grocery budget. A small feast waited on the sitting room table, still warm. Through the connecting door, she could see the adjacent room prepared for Christiana, complete with a hospital-grade bed and medical equipment that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. Mr. Bruno wants you to know you're safe here, Lucas said, setting Christiana gently on the bed. No one comes into the main house without clearance. The East Wing is particularly secure. What? Elena asked. Why is he doing this? Lucas studied her for a moment. Because someone touched what's his. And because Mattia Bruno doesn't do anything halfway. Once he decides something is under his protection, he'd burn the city down before letting harm come to it again. He left her alone in a room that cost more than she'd earn in a decade, wearing clothes still stained with blood, holding her sister's small hand while trying to understand how her carefully invisible life had detonated into this. Outside, She heard engines starting, cars leaving the estate in a convoy that promised violence. Mattia, keeping his word about finding every Moretti soldier in the city. Elena locked the door, checked it twice, and finally allowed herself to collapse onto a chair that probably belonged in a palace. Her invisibility had shattered, and in its place, something far more dangerous had emerged. Mattia Bruno had decided she was his to protect. God help anyone who disagreed. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she cleaned, but never watched sunrise through. For 3 disoriented seconds, she forgot where she was, reaching instinctively for Christiana before remembering the connecting door, the silk sheets, the impossible luxury surrounding her like a beautiful trap. Her body reminded her immediately why she was here. Every movement brought fresh waves of pain from her ribs, her jaw a dull throb that intensified when she tried to open her mouth. She found Christiana already awake in the adjacent room, sitting up in the hospital bed and staring wide-eyed at her surroundings. A breakfast tray waited on the bedside table, untouched. Steam still rose from the coffee. "Is this real?" Christiana whispered as Elena entered. "Or did I dream everything?" "It's real." Elena sat carefully on the bed's edge, smoothing her sister's hair. "How's your leg?" "It hurts. But everything hurts, so that's normal." Christiana's eyes, too old for her 10 years, studied Elena's bruised face. "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby. We're safe." "Then why does it feel like we're not?" Elena had no answer for that. She helped Christiana eat, managed a few bites herself despite the pain in her jaw, and was attempting to figure out how to request clean clothes when someone knocked. Mrs. Lombardi entered carrying garments draped over her arm, her expression carefully neutral. "Good morning. Mr. Bruno requests your presence in his study at 10 o'clock. She laid the clothes on a chair. "I took the liberty of estimating sizes. If anything doesn't fit, let me know." Elena recognized designer labels, even if she'd never worn them. "This is too much. Take it up with Mr. Bruno." Mrs. Lombardi's tone suggested she had no interest in that conversation. "The doctors will arrive at 11 to examine Christiana. One of the staff will stay with her while you're meeting with him." After she left, Elena examined the clothes with something close to despair. A simple blouse and pants, yes, but the fabric felt like water against her fingers. The price tags had been removed, but she knew what these cost. More than a week's salary. Maybe 2. She dressed carefully, every movement calculated to minimize pain, and left Christiana with Rosa, who'd materialized with promises of pastries and cartoons. The walk to Mattia's study felt longer than it had last night, possibly because she was no longer running on adrenaline and shock. Staff she'd worked beside for nearly 2 years stared openly now. Some expressions held curiosity. Others, something harder to define. Resentment, maybe, or calculation. Mattia sat behind his desk when she entered, paperwork spread before him in organized chaos. He looked up, eyes tracking over her face with an intensity that made her want to check if she'd missed blood somewhere. "Sit." Not a request. Elena sat, back straight despite her ribs' protest. "Thank you for the clothes and the room and the doctors. It's generous, but unnecessary. We can manage from here." "Can you?" He pulled a folder from his desk, the same one from last night, but now it was thicker. "I had my accountant review your financial situation overnight. Would you like to hear the summary? I know my own debts." "Do you?" He opened the folder. Medical bills totaling $97,000. Currently in collections with 3 separate agencies. Legal fees of $53,000 to prevent state custody of your sister, still accumulating at $800 per court appearance. Your basement apartment costs $1,200 monthly, of which you're 2 months behind. You make $2,100 monthly from working here, another $900 from the bar, minus taxes leaves you with roughly $2,400 take home. That's before food, utilities, medication, and the minimum payments on your debts, which total $1,850 monthly. Elena's throat tightened. Hearing it laid out like that, clinical and precise, made the impossibility of it sharper somehow. "You're $550 in the red every month," Mattia continued. "You've been skipping meals to make up the difference, wearing shoes with holes in them, buying Christiana's medication, but not your own antibiotics when you had that infection last spring. I found the unpaid prescription in your file. How do you have that information?" "I told you." I investigate everyone. He closed the folder. What I don't understand is why you didn't ask for help. You've been drowning for 2 years, working in a house with more money than sense, and you never once mentioned you needed assistance. It wasn't your problem. You worked for me. That made it my problem. He leaned back in his chair. Or did you think I'm the kind of man who lets his people suffer while I ignore it? I thought you were the kind of man who doesn't notice the people who clean his floors. The words came out sharper than she intended. Maddie's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Something closer to recognition of an uncomfortable truth. Fair point, he said quietly. I didn't see you. I should have. That's on me. He pulled out another document. This one crisp and official looking. Here's what's going to happen. Your debts are paid. All of them. Medical, legal, rent arrears, everything. The accountant transferred the funds this morning. Elena stood so fast her ribs screamed. No, absolutely not. Sit down before you fall down. I'm not your charity case. I don't need you to rescue me. This isn't rescue. It's compensation. Maddie's voice remained level. You were attacked because you worked for me. Your sister was hurt because you wore my family's crest. That makes this my debt, not yours. That's insane logic. That's how my world works. He gestured to the chair. Sit, please. The please surprised her enough that she obeyed. Mattia poured water from a carafe, slid the glass across to her. She didn't drink it, but appreciated the gesture. I've spent 2 years invisible in your house, Elena said. Touching your things, cleaning your space, never once acknowledged. Now suddenly you care about my debts? Why? Because I saw you last night. Mattia met her eyes. Really saw you. Not the ghost who moved through rooms, but the woman who tried to shield her sister, even while bleeding. The woman who apologized for inconveniencing me after being beaten. The woman who's been holding together an impossible situation through sheer force of will. He paused. You deserved better than invisibility, especially from someone who should have noticed. I don't want your guilt money. Good, because I'm not offering it out of guilt. He pushed the document toward her. I'm offering it because keeping you in debt keeps you vulnerable. The Morettas aren't done. They'll look for leverage, and financial desperation is leverage. I'm removing it. Elena stared at the paper. Debt forgiveness. Freedom from the weight that had crushed her for 2 years. It felt like a trap disguised as generosity. What do you want in return? She knew better than to believe in free gifts. Your sister healthy. You safe. And for you to stop looking at me like I'm about to hurt you. Maddie's expression softened slightly. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would make you run if you knew. But I protect what's mine. You work for me. That makes you mine to protect. The Morettas taught me I failed that responsibility. I don't fail twice. I don't work for you anymore. You said I was a guest. Semantics. He stood, moving to the window. The doctors will examine Christiana today. If they recommend surgery, it happens. No cost, no payment plans, no debt. After she's recovered and the Moretti situation is resolved, you're free to leave if you want. But until then, you stay here where I know you're protected. And if I refuse, he turned back to her. Then I respect your choice and have someone drive you home. But the debts are still paid and the doctors still see your sister. That doesn't change regardless of what you decide. Elena studied him, searching for the manipulation she knew had to be there. But his expression remained open, patient, waiting for her decision without pressure. It made no sense. Powerful men didn't offer help without strings attached. Yet here stood Mattia Bruno, offering exactly that. Why? She asked again. Really why? Because for 600 days you existed inches away from me, and I never bothered to look, he said simply. That's unacceptable. So I'm looking now, and what I see is someone who deserves better than the hand life dealt her. Elena took the document with shaking hands. Read through provisions she barely understood. Saw her debts listed and marked paid in full. Saw Christiana's medical care covered completely. Saw freedom written in legal language that should have felt like salvation. Instead it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, uncertain if the ground beneath her was solid or if she was about to fall into something she couldn't escape. Temporary, she said finally, just until Christiana's better. Temporary, Mattia agreed. They both knew it was a lie. The doctors arrived precisely at 11. 3 specialists who spoke in careful tones while examining Christiana with hands that knew their worth. Elena stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed protectively, watching every movement as if she could shield her sister through sheer vigilance alone. Dr. Savino led the consultation, his silver hair catching the light as he reviewed X-rays displayed on a tablet that probably cost more than Elena's former monthly salary. "The deterioration is significant," he said, not unkindly, but not irreversible. "With proper surgical intervention, we can stabilize the affected vertebrae and prevent further damage. Physical therapy afterward should restore most of her mobility." "Most?" Elena's voice cracked on the word. "She'll walk again," Dr. Savino assured her. "She might never run marathons, but she'll have a normal childhood. The procedure needs to happen within the next 2 months. Any longer, and we risk permanent nerve damage." Elena nodded, throat too tight for words. 2 months. She'd been racing against that clock for so long it had become white noise. Now, suddenly someone was stopping the timer entirely. Mattia, who'd been standing silently by the window, spoke. "Schedule it. Whatever needs to happen. Make it happen." After the doctors left with promises to coordinate surgical dates, Elena returned to find Christiana sitting up in bed, pale but determined. "I heard them talking. They think I might walk normal again." "They do." Elena sat beside her, careful of the 4-line one of the specialists had placed for medication. "How do you feel about that?" "Scared," Christiana admitted. "What if it doesn't work? What if I get my hopes up and then I'm still broken?" "You're not broken, baby. You've never been broken." "I can't walk right. That feels pretty broken." Christiana picked at the hospital blanket. "Everyone here is staring at us. The staff, I mean. They look at me like I'm some kind of charity case." "You're not. We're not." Elena smoothed her sister's hair, a gesture of comfort she'd performed 10,000 times. "We're just here temporarily until you're better." "Elena." Christiana's voice went smaller. "What if Mr. Bruno is mean? He looks mean, like the guys in the alley." Before Elena could answer, a knock sounded at the connecting door. Mattia entered, and Elena felt Christiana tense beside her. He carried something in his hands, a flat rectangular box wrapped in simple brown paper. "I heard you like to read," he said, addressing Christiana directly. His voice had lost some of its hard edge, softened in a way Elena hadn't heard before. "Mrs. Lombardi mentioned you finished all the books in the guest library." Christiana nodded mutely, wide-eyed. Mattia set the box on the bed. "These belong to my sister. She passed away when I was young, but she loved stories about brave girls who didn't let the world tell them what they couldn't do." He gestured to the box. "I thought you might like them." Christiana looked at Elena, who nodded permission. With careful hands, she unwrapped the package to reveal a collection of worn hardcover books. Not pristine collector's editions, but well-loved copies with cracked spines and dog-eared pages. "End of Green Gables," "A Wrinkle in Time," "The Secret Garden," "Matilda." She wrote notes in the margins. Mattia said quietly, "I hope that's okay. I thought it might be nice to know someone else loved these stories first." Christiana opened End of Green Gables to a random page. In faded pencil, someone had written, "This is exactly how I feel about everything," next to a particularly dramatic passage. A small laugh escaped her, surprised and genuine. "What was her name?" Christiana asked. "Isabella." "Bella." A shadow crossed Mattia's face. "She was 12 when she died. Car accident. She would have been 32 now." "I'm sorry." Christiana's voice carried a weight of understanding beyond her years. She knew about loss, about medical conditions that stole futures. Did she like the happy endings? She did. She used to say every story needed a happy ending, even if you had to fight for it. Mattia moved toward the door, then paused. "Get some rest. Surgery is easier when you're strong." "Mr. Bruno." Christiana's voice stopped him. "Thank you. For the books. And for helping Elena. She pretends she's okay, but she cries sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep." Elena's breath caught. Mattia's eyes found hers across the room, something unreadable in their dark depths. "She won't have to cry anymore," he said simply, and left. 3 days passed. Elena learned to navigate the strange new reality of being a guest in a house she'd once cleaned. Meals appeared at regular intervals. Staff who'd once ignored her now offered careful courtesy, tinged with curiosity. She felt their questions even when they didn't ask them. Why her? What made her special? What had she done to earn Mattia Bruno's protection? She had no answers. She was still trying to figure it out herself. Christiana, surprisingly, adapted faster. Children possessed a resilience Elena had forgotten existed. On the fourth day, Elena found her sister sitting in the sun-drenched conservatory, one of Bella's books open on her lap, while Mattia sat in a nearby chair reviewing papers. Neither spoke, but the silence felt comfortable rather than tense. "He lets me sit here while he works," Christiana explained later. "He says it's nice to have company that doesn't want things from him." The encounters became routine. Mornings, Christiana would finish breakfast and migrate to wherever Mattia was working. She'd curl up with a book while he handled whatever business kept him occupied. Sometimes he'd ask what she was reading. Sometimes she'd read passages aloud without being asked. Sometimes they'd sit in complete silence, two people comfortable existing in shared space. Elena watched it happen with growing confusion. This was Mattia Bruno, the man whose name made grown men nervous, whose reputation for cold efficiency preceded him everywhere. Yet here he was, letting a 10-year-old claim space in his domain without complaint. "She reminds me of Bella," he told Elena one evening after Christiana had fallen asleep on the conservatory sofa. He draped a blanket over her small form with surprising gentleness. "Not just the reading. The way she doesn't expect anything from me except honesty." "Children are good at seeing people clearly," Elena said. "She sees someone who lost his sister too young and never quite figured out how to fill that space." Mattia's voice held an edge of vulnerability he usually kept locked down. "I've spent 20 years building walls. Your sister walked right through them in 4 days. Is that a problem?" "I haven't decided yet." He looked at Elena. "She asked me today if I thought her surgery would hurt. Not the doctors, me. Like my opinion mattered." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That it would hurt, but she'd survive it. That scars prove you fought and won, not that you were weak." He paused. "She said I have kind eyes when I'm not trying to look scary." Elena almost smiled. "Do you try to look scary?" "Constantly. It's exhausting." Something in his expression softened. "She also said I should smile more because I look sad when I think no one's watching." "She's perceptive. She's brave. Braver than most adults I know." Mattia moved toward the door. "The surgery is scheduled for next Wednesday. Dr. Savino says she's strong enough. I'll make sure the best surgical team in the country is there." "Mattia." Elena stopped him with his name, still unused to using it. "Thank you. For the books. For being patient with her. For seeing her as more than an obligation." "She's not an obligation." He looked back at the sleeping child. "She's a reminder that some things are still worth protecting. That not everything in my world has to be about power and control and violence." His eyes met Elena's. "Your sister is teaching me how to be something other than what I've become. That's not an obligation. That's a gift." He left Elena, standing in the conservatory, watching her sister sleep beneath a blanket that probably cost a fortune, surrounded by dead girls' books and a dangerous man's unexpected tenderness. Christiana stirred, mumbling something in her sleep. Elena smoothed her hair, feeling the weight of debts paid and futures uncertain, and the strange alchemy of a broken child healing a broken man simply by existing in his space. Outside, the city stretched dark and vast. Somewhere in those shadows, the Morettis were planning. But here, in this moment, there was only warmth and safety and the impossible gift of hope. Elena found Mattia in the estate's gym at 5 in the morning. She'd woken early, restless from dreams she couldn't quite remember, and wandered the halls in search of coffee. The sound of impact led her to a room she'd cleaned dozens of times, but never seen occupied. Through the glass wall, she watched him attack a heavy bag with controlled precision, each strike landing with force that made the chains rattle. He wore only workout pants, no shirt, no armor of expensive fabric to hide behind. For the first time, Elena saw the full canvas of his skin. Ink covered him from collarbone to waist in an intricate tapestry that looked like it had taken years to complete. Not the random collection of symbols some men wore, but a deliberate narrative written in black and gray. She'd glimpsed pieces before through open collars or rolled sleeves, but never the complete story. Mattia noticed her watching, his hands stilled on the bag, chest heaving from exertion, sweat making the artwork gleam under fluorescent lights. He didn't cover himself or turn away, just watch her watch him, waiting to see what she'd do. Elena pushed open the door. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not. He unwrapped the tape from his hands, methodical movements that suggested ritual. Couldn't sleep. Christiana had nightmares. About the surgery. Elena stepped closer, drawn despite herself. I got her settled, but then I was too wired to go back to bed. Coffee's in the corner. Fresh pot. He gestured to a small setup that looked out of place among the weights and equipment. I make it strong. She poured a cup, grateful for something to do with her hands. The coffee was indeed strong, borderline aggressive, exactly what she needed. When she turned back, Mattia was watching her with that intensity that made her feel simultaneously visible and exposed. "You're staring," he said without accusation. "You're covered in art." Elena couldn't help herself. "I've seen pieces of it, but never everything together." "Most people don't." He moved to a bench, sat, grabbed a water bottle. "It's not exactly suitable for business meetings." "What does it mean?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "If that's not too personal." Mattia studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to his chest. "Come here. I'll show you." Elena approached cautiously, coffee cup warming her palms. Up close, the detail was extraordinary. What had looked like abstract patterns from a distance resolved into scenes, faces, symbols layered with meaning she couldn't immediately parse. "Here." Mattia pointed to his left pectoral, where a woman's face emerged from roses. "My mother. She died when I was 8. Cancer, same as Bella 2 years later." The resemblance was clear in the delicate lines of the portrait. The same eyes Mattia carried, rendered in permanent grief. "My father." He indicated his right side, where a man's stern face presided over crossed swords. "Killed when I was 16 in a territory dispute. The man who shot him is buried under a highway overpass." "That's this." He traced a small symbol near his ribs that Elena had once mistaken for decorative filler. She swallowed. "You keep your ghosts close." "We all do. Mine are just visible." His fingers moved to his sternum, where a phoenix rose from flames. "Bella. She loved mythology. Said the phoenix proved death wasn't the end, just a transformation. I got this after she died, when I decided I'd either burn to death or rise from what life had done to our family." "Which did you choose?" "Both." His smile held no warmth. "I burned everything that reminded me of weakness, then built something stronger from the ashes." Elena set her coffee down, drawn by something she didn't quite understand. "May I?" Mattia nodded. She reached out, fingertips barely grazing the phoenix on his chest. His skin was warm, the ink smooth under her touch. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong, life pumping beneath, art memorializing death. "Here." He guided her hand to his left shoulder, where dates were inscribed in elegant script. "Every person I've lost. Every date I failed to protect someone. There were too many." Elena counted at least 15 dates scattered across his shoulder and upper arm, each one a monument to absence. Her throat tightened. "And this." She indicated a section on his right side, where chains wrapped around his ribs and broke apart near his spine. "The family business. Legacy and prison all at once." Mattia's voice went flat. "I inherited at 16. No choice, no preparation, just sudden responsibility for an empire built on violence. The chains remind me I'm bound to it whether I want to be or not. The breaking reminds me I've made peace with never being free." Elena traced the broken links, following them around to his back. He shifted to give her access, and she saw more. A battlefield scene across his shoulder blades. Names she didn't recognize. Coordinates. Phrases in Italian she couldn't translate, but recognized as prayers. "You carry so much," she said quietly. "We all carry what we can't put down." He looked at her over his shoulder. "You think your scars are less significant because they're not visible." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Elena pulled her hand back, suddenly aware she'd been touching him for minutes now, mapping his history like reading Braille. "My scars are financial. Circumstantial," she said. "Yours are written in permanence. Yours are written in exhaustion and sacrifice and years of your life spent drowning." Mattia stood, turned to face her fully. "You think I don't see them? The way you flinch when you move too fast because your ribs aren't healed. The way you count the cost of everything, even though I've told you money isn't an issue here. The way you apologize for existing in space you have every right to occupy. That's different." "Ow!" He stepped closer. "Because my father chose violence, and yours chose abandonment? Because I inherited power, and you inherited debt? Because my scars are visible, and yours are invisible? His hand lifted, hovering near her face without touching. I've spent 20 years building armor. You spent 2 years disappearing. Tell me which is worse. Elena couldn't answer. Her throat had closed around words that wouldn't form. You look at my tattoos and see tragedy documented. Matthias said, I look at you and see survival that never got commemorated. You're still standing after 2 years of carrying weight that would have broken most people. That's art too. It just doesn't show on skin. I'm not strong. I'm just desperate. Desperation that doesn't quit becomes strength whether you call it that or not. His hand finally touched, fingertips gentle against her bruised jaw. You see my scars and understand I'm damaged. I see yours and understand you're unbreakable. We're both right. Elena met his eyes. This close, she could see flecks of brown in the black, warmth hidden beneath ice. Could see the boy who'd lost everything looking out from behind the man who'd learned to lose nothing. Why did you really help us? She asked. The truth. Because I saw myself in you. The admission came quietly. Someone drowning alone, convinced asking for help was weakness. Someone so used to carrying everything they forgot hands could hold things other than burdens. His thumb traced her cheekbone, careful of the fading bruise. I couldn't save my mother or Bella or the 15 names on my shoulder. But I could save you and Christiana. So I did. That's not salvation. That's guilt. Maybe. He dropped his hand. Or maybe it's recognition that some ghost gets second chances. That some stories don't have to end in tragedy, even when they start there. He stepped back, putting distance between them. Your sister's surgery is in 5 days. After she's healed and safe, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. But I won't pretend I won't miss having someone who looks at my scars and sees a person instead of a monster. He left her standing in the gym, surrounded by equipment she'd once cleaned without seeing, holding coffee gone cold in her hands. Elena looked down at her palms, at skin unmarked by ink, but carved with stories all the same. Calluses from years of scrubbing floors. Scars from kitchen accidents and a life lived too fast to be careful. Lines that fortune tellers claim showed destiny, but really just showed time passing. She set the cup down and flexed her fingers. Mattia was right. They were both collections of scars, his visible and hers hidden. Both damaged. Both still standing. Both, perhaps, learning that survival didn't have to mean surviving alone. Outside, dawn broke over the city. In 5 days, Christiana would face surgery. But today, Elena had learned something crucial. Sometimes the most dangerous men were dangerous because they'd been broken first. And sometimes broken things, when placed together, found a way to hold each other up. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Elena was helping Christiana with breakfast when Mrs. Lombardi rushed in with a tablet, her usually composed face pale. She sat on the table without a word, the headline filling the screen in bold letters. 3 more Eddie lieutenants found dead in warehouse district. Elena's coffee turned to acid in her stomach. She pulled the tablet closer, scanning the article while trying to keep it angled away from Christiana's curious eyes. The details were clinical but brutal. Bodies discovered by dock workers at dawn. Evidence of prolonged interrogation. A message spray-painted on the warehouse wall in letters 3 feet high. Touch mine again. No signature needed. Everyone in the city would know who'd left that message. Where is he? Elena asked Mrs. Lombardi. His study. He's been there since 3 in the morning. The housekeeper's voice carried something Elena couldn't quite identify. Not fear exactly. Respect tinged with wariness. He's not seeing anyone. Elena didn't care. She left Christiana with Rosa and marched to Mattia's study, not bothering to knock. He sat behind his desk, surrounded by papers and laptop screens, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Stubble shadowed his jaw. His eyes carried the weight of a sleepless night spent doing things Elena wasn't sure she wanted to understand. You killed them. Not a question. Good morning to you too. Mattia's voice held no remorse. And, technically, I didn't kill anyone. I simply ensured certain conversations happened. 3 men are dead. 3 men who put their hands on you and your sister, who terrorized a 10-year-old child to make a point. He leaned back in his chair. Did you expect me to file a police report? I expected you to handle it quietly, not make a spectacle that's on every news channel in the city. Quiet doesn't send messages. Quiet lets people think they could try again. Mattia stood, moving to the window. The Morettis needed to understand that touching what's mine has consequences. Now they do. What's yours? Elena's hands clenched. You keep saying that like we're possessions. You're under my protection. In my world, that means the same thing. He turned to face her. Don't pretend to be horrified. You knew what I was when you took my help. You knew men like me don't solve problems with lawyers and mediation. I knew you were dangerous. I didn't know you were a monster. Something flickered in his eyes. Yes, you did. You've always known. You just chose to ignore it because I was helping your sister. He crossed the room toward her. I'm a monster, Elena. I've done things that would keep you awake at night. But I'm a monster who ensures the people under my protection stay safe. Those 3 men, they're just the beginning. What do you mean? I mean the Morettis declared war when they touched you. I'm finishing it. He pulled up a map on his tablet, showed her a dozen red markers across the city. These are their operations. Warehouses, restaurants, front businesses. By the end of the week, they'll be ashes or mine. By the end of the month, the Moretti name will be a memory. Elena stared at the map, at the systematic destruction he'd planned with military precision. You're going to start a war that will get people killed. I'm ending a war they started. There's a difference. Mattia set the tablet down. And yes, people will die. That's what happens when you operate in a world built on violence. But none of them will be you or Christiana. That's what matters to me. And everyone else. Everyone else chose this life. You didn't. His voice softened slightly. I know you want me to be something I'm not. To handle this with mercy and restraint. But mercy in my world is weakness. And weakness gets the people you love killed. I learned that when I watched my father die because he trusted the wrong person. When Bella died because he'd made enemies who couldn't touch him, but could touch his family. So you became worse than them. I became what I had to be to survive. To protect what matters. He moved closer. You're angry. I understand that. You've spent your life trying to be good, trying to do things the right way. And where did it get you? Drowning in debt while your sister suffered. Sometimes the right way isn't the effective way. Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was wrong. That violence only bred more violence. That there had to be another path. But she'd spent 2 years doing things the right way. 2 years of payment plans and collection agencies, and watching Christiana's condition worsen while she followed every rule. The right way had left her with nothing but desperation. I don't want more blood on my conscience, she said quietly. Then don't carry it. This is my choice, my responsibility. Mattia's hand lifted, almost touching her face before he seemed to think better of it. You asked me why I helped you. The truth is I saw someone still fighting after life had given them every reason to quit. Someone protecting what mattered, even when it destroyed them. I respect that. And people I respect don't get hurt on my watch. Even if it means burning the city. Especially then. No hesitation. The city will rebuild. It always does. But I only get one chance to make sure you and Christiana are safe. I'm not wasting it on half measures. The news continued throughout the day. A Moretti restaurant burned to its foundation. Arson investigators finding accelerant traces. A shipping container full of their imported goods seized by authorities acting on an anonymous tip. 2 more associates found beaten and broken, dumped outside emergency rooms with messages carved into their skin that the media couldn't broadcast. The city trembled. Social media exploded with speculation. News anchors discussed the sudden escalation in gang violence with concern that barely masked fascination. Police held press conferences promising investigations while privately understanding this was a matter they couldn't touch. The Bruno family operated above certain laws, and everyone knew it. Elena watched it unfold from the safety of the estate, feeling complicit in violence she'd never asked for but couldn't stop. Christiana remained blissfully unaware, occupied with Bella's books and physical therapy sessions with specialists who cost more per hour than Elena used to make in a week. The surgery loomed 3 days away, a deadline that made everything else feel simultaneously urgent and irrelevant. That evening, Luca knocked on Elena's door. Boss wants to see you. The conservatory. She found Mattia standing among the plants, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city spreading below like scattered diamonds. He held a glass of whiskey he wasn't drinking, just turning it slowly in his hands. It's done, he said without preamble. The primary Moretti operations are neutralized. Their leadership is either dead, missing, or too terrified to act. Their territory is being absorbed by families who understand the new order. How many? Elena asked. Does it matter? Yes. 7 dead. 14 hospitalized. Another 20 disappeared, though I suspect several of those fled the city rather than stayed to fight. He finally looked at her. The ones who touched you specifically, they won't be touching anyone ever again. Elena's stomach turned. Did you do it yourself? Some of it. No shame in his admission. I wanted them to know why it was happening, to understand that touching what's mine has consequences they can't run from. I didn't ask you to do this. You didn't have to. The moment they saw that crest on your uniform and decided to hurt you anyway, they made their choice. I'm just ensuring they don't get the opportunity to make it again. He set the glass down. In 3 days, Christiana has surgery. Dr. Savino expects a full recovery. After that, you're both free to leave if you want. But you'll leave knowing that no one in this city will dare touch you again. That's what Ade bought. At what cost? Mine to pay. He moved toward the door. Get some rest. Surgery days are long. Mattia. She stopped him. Do you ever regret it? Becoming this. He was quiet for a long moment. Every day. But regret doesn't change reality. It just makes carrying it harder. He looked back at her. I'm a monster, Elena. But I'm a monster who kept you safe. Sometimes that has to be enough. He left her alone in the conservatory, surrounded by beautiful things growing in controlled conditions while outside the city burned according to his will. Elena pressed her palm against the cold glass, watching lights flicker in the distance. Emergency vehicles, maybe, or just life, continuing in a city that had learned long ago to adapt to violence as weather, inevitable and expected. Somewhere out there, the Moretti family was learning the cost of touching what Mattia Bruno had decided to protect. And Elena, despite her horror, couldn't deny the terrible security in knowing that no one would dare hurt her or Christiana again. The monster had made certain of it. The night before Christiana's surgery, Elena couldn't sleep. She sat in the conservatory watching fog roll across the grounds, making the security lights blur into soft halos. Tomorrow would determine whether her sister walked again or spent the rest of her life imprisoned by a failing spine. All the money in the world, all of Mattia's power, couldn't control the outcome once the surgeons began. She heard footsteps behind her. Mattia, still dressed despite the late hour, carrying tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there this morning. You should be resting, he said. So should you. Elena gestured to the empty chair beside her. But neither of us is very good at that. Apparently. He sat, silent for a moment. Then, there's been a development. Elena's stomach tightened. What kind of development? The Morettas sent an emissary tonight. Requested a meeting under truce terms. His jaw clenched. They're offering to end the conflict. That's good news, isn't it? It would be if their terms weren't what they are. Mattia's hands curled into fists on his knees. They want you. The world tilted. What? Not to kill. They're not that stupid. His voice carried barely controlled rage. They want save face. To prove I can't protect everyone. They want me to hand you over for 24 hours. They'll photograph you, document that they had access to you despite my protection. Then they'll return you unharmed, and we'll call the war finished. 24 hours. Elena's mind raced through what could happen in that time. They're lying. They'd kill me. Probably. Or they'd hurt you badly enough that the point would be made regardless. Mattia finally looked at her. They specifically said you, not Christiana. They're betting I'll choose a child's safety over a cleaning woman's dignity. The clinical way he said it cut deeper than any insult. And what did you tell them? I told them I'd consider it and give my answer by dawn. He stood, moved to the window. My advisors think I should take the deal. That you're not worth continued conflict. That sacrificing one person to end a war that's destabilizing the entire city is basic mathematics. Elena's throat closed. And what do you think? I think they're right about the mathematics. He turned to face her, which is why I'm not taking the deal. Relief and confusion warred in her chest. You're not. No. Simple. Direct. Final. My advisors left the meeting tonight, convinced I've lost my mind. 3 of them resigned. 2 were threatening to defect to rival families. 1 called me weak to my face. Mattia, you can't destroy your organization over me. I'm not destroying it. I'm rebuilding it with better people. He crossed back to her. You want to know what I told them? I said any man who thinks protecting someone under my care is weakness doesn't understand what strength actually means. That the day I trade people like pawns to avoid difficulty is the day I'm no better than the animals I put down. But your position, your power, means nothing if I compromise on this. He crouched before her chair, so they were eye level. You asked me days ago why I really helped you. I told you I saw myself in your situation. But it's more than that. You represent something I thought I'd lost. The idea that some lines shouldn't be crossed regardless of strategic advantage. That protecting the powerless isn't weakness. It's the only thing that separates us from monsters who hurt for profit. You said you were a monster. I am. But even monsters can have principles. His hands found hers, gripped firm. The Morettis are betting I'll choose the easy path. That I'll sacrifice you to maintain peace and power. They're wrong. I'd rather burn every bridge I've built than prove them right. They'll come for us. For her. Elena's voice broke on the last word. They'll try. They won't succeed. Mattia's certainty was absolute. I've spent the last 3 hours repositioning security. The estate is a fortress. Christiana's surgery happens in a private surgical suite with my people controlling every entrance. We're not giving them opportunities. This is insane. You're risking everything for her. For you. Yes. He said it like it was the simplest truth in the world. You and Christiana walked into my house as ghosts I'd never bothered to see. You're leaving as people I'd go to war to protect. That's not weakness. That's the first genuinely good decision I've made in 20 years. Elena stared at him. This man who commanded violence like other people commanded resources, who'd killed without hesitation to defend her, who was now choosing potential ruin over pragmatic betrayal. Your advisors are right. You've lost your mind. Probably. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. But my mind was never particularly stable to begin with. A phone buzzed. Mattia pulled it from his pocket, read the message, and his expression hardened into something deadly. They're not waiting for dawn. The emissary just reported back that I've rejected the terms. The Morettis are moving tonight. How long do we have? Hour, maybe 2. He stood, pulling her up with him. Get Christiana. Bring her to the panic room beneath the east wing. It's reinforced, supplied for a week if necessary. You'll be safe there. Where will you be? Making sure they never get close enough to test those defenses. He gripped her shoulders. Listen to me carefully. Whatever you hear tonight, whatever happens, you stay in that room until I come for you personally. Not Luca, not Mrs. Lombardi, not anyone else. Just me. Understood? Mattia, promise me. His eyes bored into hers. Promise you'll protect her and yourself no matter what. I promise. The words tasted like goodbye. He pulled her close, a brief embrace that spoke volumes in its desperations. Then he was gone, shouting orders into his phone, the monster sliding back into place over the man who'd chosen honor over advantage. Elena ran to Christiana's room. Her sister woke confused, rubbing sleep from her eyes as Elena explained in calm tones that contradicted her racing heart. They needed to move to a safer room, just for tonight, just to be careful before surgery. Is someone coming? Christiana's voice was small. Maybe, but Mr. Bruno won't let them hurt us. He promised me I'd wake up after surgery. Christiana clutched Bella's copy of Anne of Green Gables. He said I'd walk again and everything would be okay. And he keeps his promises. Elena prayed that was true. The panic room was everything Mattia had described. Steel-reinforced walls, supplies, medical equipment, monitors showing every angle of the estate. They sealed themselves inside, and Elena pulled Christiana close, listening to the sounds filtering through security speakers. Shouting, gunfire, the crunch of vehicles on gravel. More gunfire, sustained and violent. Christiana buried her face in Elena's shoulder, whimpering. Elena sang softly, childhood songs their mother had taught them, anything to drown out the battle raging above. Hours crawled past. The sounds intensified, then gradually quieted. Elena watched the monitors, seeing Mattia's men moving in coordinated patterns, seeing bodies being dragged away, seeing the systematic cleanup of violence. But she didn't see Mattia. Dawn broke. The estate fell silent. Elena held her breath, watching the panic room door, praying for it to open while terrified of what might be on the other side. The lock disengaged. The door swung open. Mattia stood there, clothes torn and bloodied, a cut above his eyebrow bleeding down his face, exhaustion written in every line of his body. But alive, standing, victorious. It's done, he said. The Morettas are finished. Permanently. Elena nearly collapsed with relief. Christiana peeked out from behind her. Did you keep your promise? Always. Mattia managed a tired smile. Surgery is in 4 hours. Dr. Savino is ready when you are. He'd chosen them. Over peace, over political advantage, over the easy path. He'd chosen to fight because the alternative meant betraying the two people who'd reminded him that some things were worth protecting regardless of cost. Elena understood then what she'd been afraid to acknowledge. This wasn't just protection. This was something far more dangerous. This was belonging. And for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of it. The surgical suite smelled of antiseptic and controlled climate. Elena held Christiana's hand while Dr. Savino explained the procedure one final time, his calm voice a counterpoint to the machines beeping their patient rhythms. Mattia stood near the window, silent sentinel despite the blood still visible on his collar, the cut above his eye hastily bandaged. He'd refused treatment until after Christiana was safely in surgery. You'll be asleep, Dr. Savino said gently, and when you wake up, the hard part will be over. Christiana looked at Elena, then at Mattia. Promise I'll wake up. I promise. Mattia crossed her bedside. And when you do, we'll start planning what you want to do first when you can walk properly again. Everything. Christiana's smile wavered. I want to do everything. Then everything it is. He squeezed her hand once, a gesture so tender it made Elena's chest ache. They sedated her. Elena watched her sister's eyes flutter closed, watched the anesthesiologist confirm she was under, watched them wheel her through doors Elena couldn't follow beyond. The surgery would take 6 hours. 6 hours of waiting while skilled hands worked to rebuild what disease had stolen. Mattia guided Elena to a private waiting room. Mrs. Lombardi had prepared tea, sandwiches, magazines no one would read. The trappings of normalcy in a situation that was anything but, you should get that looked at. Elena gestured to Mattia's eyebrow. Later. He sat heavily, exhaustion finally catching up. How are you? Terrified. Hopeful. Grateful. She laughed weakly. Mostly confused about how we got here. You needed help. I had resources. The rest just followed. He leaned back, eyes closing. Simple mathematics. Nothing about this is simple. Elena watched him, this man who turned her world inside out in 3 weeks. You chose war over peace because of us. I chose principle over convenience. There's a difference. His eyes opened, finding hers. And I'd make the same choice again, even knowing what it cost. Especially knowing. No hesitation. I've spent 20 years building an empire on compromise and strategic cruelty. It made me powerful and empty. You and Christiana reminded me that some things matter more than power. That's worth any price. They waited together as hours bled into each other. Mattia made calls, rebuilding what the night's defections had fractured. Elena listened to him speak in Italian, tone commanding, offering no apologies for his decisions. Men who'd questioned him fell back in line or found themselves replaced. By hour 3, the organization had stabilized under his renewed control. Dr. Savino emerged at the 6-hour mark. The surgery was successful. We've stabilized the affected vertebrae and removed the pressure on her spinal cord. She'll need extensive physical therapy, but the prognosis is excellent. Elena couldn't speak around the relief choking her. Mattia asked the questions she couldn't form. Recovery timeline. Potential complications. When they could see her. She's in recovery now. Give her an hour. Then you can sit with her. Dr. Savino smiled. She's a strong girl. She'll do well. When they finally saw Christiana, she was pale and small against white sheets, for lines and monitors tracking her progress. But alive. Safe. Fixed. Elena sat beside her, holding her hand, while Mattia stood watched by the door like violence itself couldn't cross his threshold. Elena. Christiana's voice. Hours later, scratchy from intubation. I'm here, baby. Elena leaned close. Surgery went perfectly. Dr. Savino says you're going to walk again. Tears tracked down Christiana's face. Really? Really? Elena wiped them away. But it'll take work. Physical therapy, exercises, patience. I can do that. Christiana's eyes found Mattia. You kept your promise. Always. He approached the bed. Now you have to keep yours. When you're healed, you're going to show me all that everything you want to do. Deal. Her smile was weak, but genuine. The weeks that followed were measured in small victories. Christiana's first day, sitting up unaided. Her first successful physical therapy session. The day she stood with a walker, legs trembling but holding. Elena was there for all of it, no longer disappearing into corners, but standing visible and present. The staff had stopped staring. She'd become part of the estate's fabric, not as a cleaner, but as the woman under Mattia Bruno's protection. The woman, some whispered, who'd changed him. Elena noticed the changes too. Mattia smiled more, especially around Christiana. The hard edges hadn't disappeared, but they'd softened when it mattered. He still ran an empire built on violence, still made decisions that kept Elena awake some nights, but he'd drawn lines that hadn't existed before. Protection meant something now beyond strategic asset management. It meant caring. It meant sacrifice. It meant showing up every afternoon while Christiana did her exercises, encouraging her through pain and frustration, celebrating each centimeter of progress. 2 months after surgery, Dr. Savino scheduled the final test. Christiana would walk unassisted across the physical therapy room. 20 steps. No walker, no assistance, just her own strength against gravity and fear. They gathered to watch. Elena, Mattia, Dr. Savino, the physical therapist who'd worked with her daily. Christiana stood at one end of the room, hands clenched at her sides, determination written across her young face. "You've got this," Elena called. 20 steps. "Everything, remember?" Mattia added, "This is just the beginning." Christiana took a breath, lifted her right foot, placed it forward, then her left. Step by painful step, she crossed the room. 13, 14, 15. Her legs shook, her face contorted with effort. But she didn't stop. 19, 20. She made it, turned around, grinning through tears, and raised her arms in triumph. "I did it." Elena ran to her, catching her in an embrace that threatened to topple them both. They were both crying, laughing, holding each other like they could squeeze 2 years of fear into this single moment of joy. When Elena looked up, Mattia was watching them with an expression she'd never seen before. Not quite tears, but close. The carefully controlled monster crack just enough to let something human show through. That evening, Mattia requested Elena's presence in his study. She found him standing by the window, watching the city lights blur into constellation. "Christiana's cleared for discharge next week," he said. "Dr. Savino says she can continue outpatient therapy. She'll be fully recovered within 6 months. Thank you." The words felt insufficient for everything he'd done. For all of it. The surgery, the protection, giving us a chance when we had nothing. "You had everything that mattered. I just provided resources." He turned to face her. "I told you when this started that you could leave when it was over. When Christiana was healed and the threat was neutralized. Both conditions are met now." Elena's chest tightened. "Are you asking us to leave?" "I'm giving you the choice I promised." His voice remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed something deeper. "You came here as a ghost. You're leaving as a person. That was always the goal. And if I don't want to leave?" Silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Mattia studied her face like he was searching for lies or obligation, finding neither. "Then stay." Simple words carrying complicated weight. Not as staff or charity cases or people I'm protecting out of duty. Stay as family. Both of you. Family. Elena tested the word. "In your world, what does that mean?" "It means you stop hiding in corners. Stop apologizing for existing. Stop treating this house like somewhere you're borrowing instead of somewhere you belong." He moved closer. "It means Christiana grows up safe and educated and surrounded by people who care if she succeeds. It means you finally rest after 2 years of drowning. And what do you get out of it? Proof that I'm more than what I was built to be." His hand reached up, fingertips brushing her jaw where the bruises had finally faded. "You and Christiana walked into my house and reminded me that protecting people isn't weakness. That choosing honor over advantage matters. I need that reminder. I need you to keep showing me how to be something other than just a monster in expensive suits." Elena leaned into his touch. "I'm not sure I know how to stop running." "Then learn here, where it's safe." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Where you're seen, where you matter." She thought about the basement apartment she'd never have to return to, the debts that no longer existed. Her sister walking unassisted across a room, grinning with triumph. She thought about Mattia's tattoos mapping his scars, about his choice to fight rather than betray, about the way he'd looked at Christiana taking her first steps. She thought about belonging, about being visible, about standing in the light instead of hiding in shadows. Okay, Elena said, we'll stay. Mattia smiled, genuine and unguarded, and pulled her close. Through the window behind him, the city stretched vast and unknowable, full of violence and beauty intertwined. But here, in this moment, there was only warmth and safety and the revolutionary act of two broken people choosing to stop surviving alone. Welcome home, Mattia said against her hair. And for the first time since her mother died, since the debts began, since she learned to make herself invisible, Elena believed it.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.